All right, let's talk through what we're going to do today. So, all right, so let me talk through a little bit what we're going to do today. The objective of this stream is to sort of show what it takes to release a new version of the FSharp.Compiler.Service component, which is a wrapper around the F# compiler that provides a nice API for interactivity. And this component is then consumed by other projects, primarily things like the F# autocomplete project, to provide editor tooling for Visual Studio Code, Emacs, Vim, a whole bunch of other things. In fact, not this component we're going to build today, but the same sources are the heart of the Visual Studio integration and the JetBrains Writer integration as well. So that's sort of what we're doing tonight, or this afternoon. Hi, Fubarius. I figured it was a little hot in Texas right now to be doing anything outside, so why not show some code? So overall, what we're going to do tonight in terms of, I keep saying tonight, what we're going to do today in terms of steps are going to be to find out the last place that I did this migration from, and I do this like roughly monthly. So I've got this SHA documented in the last release, and then find out where the current head of .NET/F# is, and then we're going to basically do a long get rebase operation that goes from that initial point. Oh, let me see if I can boot this up a little bit. All right, so I boosted it up quite a bit, so let me know if it's any better. All right, Fubar? So we're going to do a multi-step rebase operation from .NET F# onto FSharp.Compiler.Service. And I do that for a couple reasons. One is to make it easier on myself, so I don't have to do one giant merge of every change that's happened in the previous month, but also so that attribution and traceability is maintained. It's important to me that the things we release are traceable, and so if I do a rebase, if I take a chunk of commits and replay them, then it's more easy to compare between the two. And I think this is especially going to make more sense when we fold this FSharp.Compiler.Service component back into the main compiler repository. The fact that they're split right now is kind of a historical artifact, and in fact most of the packaging of the compiler itself happens outside of Microsoft, I would say. So with that, let's do a little bit of investigation and see where we are. So I can sort of show you where things started and where they ended last time. So we're going to need the FSharp.Compiler.Service repo. I used to have a set of shortcuts set up to where I could just type in repo names, but so we're going to want this release, and then we're going to need the .NET F# one as well. And so here's the last release we did, 30. This was June 29th, so month and a half. So I'm a little bit behind my monthly schedule. But you can see I've linked the SHAs that we went from and to. And like we're effectively going to start from this SHA right here as our base. So that is good information to keep. And the current head of .NET F#, and if there's any questions anyone has about why we do this or anything that you see as we go along, feel free to drop it in chat and I'll answer as much as I can. So the latest commit is this guy right here. So we're going to, there it is. I want that SHA. And for my own edification, a couple pull requests ago, and this is something I should have set up quite a while ago, is documenting, there we go, this command right here. This is the magic command here. And for a long time I was doing this, this process by hand, basically. And this takes a lot of the pain away, because like before I would look at the entire set of changes and I would get cherry pick each one after the other. It was a huge pain in the butt. This effectively does that, but the key differentiator here is this preserve merges flag, which means because .NET F# uses a merge heavy flow, sometimes you would, if you just naively cherry-picked things, you would miss merge conflict resolutions. And so preserve merges tells Git to walk all of those and apply the changes as necessary. So that's where we're going to start. And so we'll do this rebase. We'll work through any conflicts that arise. We'll replay all the changes, and then we will do builds periodically to make sure all the compilation still works and whatnot. And at the end of this, we should be able to send a new PR up to the FSharp.Compiler.Service repo, bump version numbers as appropriate, depending on whether or not public APIs have changed or if it's a major, minor, patch release, whatnot. Push the tags up and cut a whole new package. So at the end of this, we should have a new version of the FSharp.Compiler.Service ready to go. So first things first is going to be, now that we have our, let me make this a little bit bigger. Now that we have our source and destination SHAs and whatnot, we're going to want to update our pointers. And so what I've got here is FSharp.Compiler.Service with a few things set up. Origin is my fork of it. So Barenfell / FSharp.Compiler.Service. Upstream is FSharp.Compiler.Service, and VS is .NET F#. And so in this way, I can use the commit SHAs that we've tracked here, which are for the .NET F# repo. I can reference them because I've got the remote VS right here. So this is what makes those SHAs usable by me. And so we can do a thing here now, and we can view the log, and this is something I like to do to sanity check myself. We can view the git log between these SHAs, so we can get an idea of what's happened between these 2 points and get an idea of how much pain honestly we're about to be in for. So what we should see here, like just before we even look at it, just a sanity check, because I did this last merge late June, we should see a series of commits from late June to today, basically. And if we see more than that, that's a clue that maybe I got the command wrong, or maybe we're not looking at the right range of commits. So yeah, some of this you just see because there's merges involved. So like the fact that we went back this far, there's in the intervening time between that merge and that last merge in mid-June and today, what happened was they merged the dev 16.2 branch, right? So the Visual Studio 16.2 release has happened. So that's available, and the way the Visual Studio team works is master is latest stuff, and anything that needs to go to 16.2, which is this release, or 16.3, the next upcoming release, gets merged into those specific branches. And when those products launch, those come back in and get merged into master. So what we're seeing with all of these older commits here are when things merge from master into 16.2 repeatedly over time. So I would expect a lot of these to be no ops for us effectively, because we've already got the features involved here, basically. So this release happened, that's great. A whole bunch of dependency stuff, some test stuff. There's a new FSharp checker API, and FSharp checker is the primary sort of entry point for doing type checking on code. So this is a thing that is very often used. Where did we go? Yeah, this FSharp checker guy is very often used in interactive scenarios. So this is an API change, and we'll take a look at it. If it's additive, then that'll be a signal for a minor version bump. So let me just start tracking that. So right now we're at a minor, and this is just something I try and keep an eye on. If there's a public API change that would cause code to break, or if there were members that were deprecated or whatnot, then we'll bump this up to a major. But as it stands right now, additive changes mean it's a minor bump. And this is just normal Simver stuff. A whole bunch of merge requests, or 16.2 merges. Version props is how they handle, here, let me just show you this guy real quick. Yeah, so like version props is how they track package versions in a consistent way inside the compiler, because they can't use packet. So they've just got this version props file that has a whole bunch of MS build properties for various packages. So we're in July. This is fine. Ooh, there's Stack Overflow fixes, which actually might help some folks that have been complaining about Stack Overflows happening in the compiler. Yeah, more dependency updates. Anytime you see this .NET Arcade stuff, .NET Arcade is a Microsoft open source wide tooling repository. And so like every Microsoft project now includes all of this stuff, like includes an entire subdirectory. It's almost like a Git submodule, but worse, that handles having a consistent build and engineering setup. So it's just something that noises up this quite a bit. But from our perspective, we don't care about anything that happens in that. And you'll see that as we actually start to do the merge. A whole bunch of stuff here recently was tests getting migrated from the old compiler test framework over to NuGet, or NUnit, sorry. Lots of this was Stefan Forkman and Sergey Taihan, and I know there's a couple of the people that have contributed. I don't mean to leave you out, but there were several people who swarmed these tests. So that's all this stuff here. As nice as that is, it's not going to affect us really, because they were all compiler tests and not FSharp.Compiler.Service specific tests. So a lot of these will be no ops for us as well. So tests, publish PDBs in FSharp core. This isn't going to be relevant to us because we don't publish FSharp core as a side effect of this whole operation. More tests moving. Like, I don't see anything here that makes me especially worried about what we're about to do today. So that's good. So I always like to see where I am right now. This is our last tag for FSharp.Compiler.Service. You can see my wonderful typo there. So what I'm going to do at this point is move this integration branch that I use often up to here. I just like to use branches for things instead of tags or whatnot. So now my branch is up here, and we're going to use this as our starting point. We're going to do this rebase. We're going to do this guy onto F#, and our last integration point was this commit right here. So we're going to replace that commit SHA right here, and our most recent SHA that we're going to integrate to is right here. And this is what's going to start the magic. If I can type things. Rebase twice. And another thing you can do real quick is plop an interactive in there, and it'll calculate all the commits that it needs to do. And this should be... Sorry, we got a question in chat. I'm going to call you Cat, if that's all right, because I can't pronounce all of that. You're right. Mono by itself only targets desktop at the moment. This isn't something that's directly relevant to what we're going to do today, though. FSharp.Compiler.Service is a distinct component from the mono distribution of the compiler, and there's a separate package or a separate repository specifically for making the version of F# that goes into mono. In fact, let me go point you to that. So F# is the mono packaging repository. Effectively, what we're doing right now is taking a subset of everything that's in .NET F# and packaging it as a community effort to provide the compiler service as an API, because Microsoft doesn't do that right now. This is a similar thing. This is a community-supported distribution of the F# compiler. Right now, it is quite old. This is quite behind. It is, if I had to estimate, it is about a year behind the compiler. I'm not 100% sure on what Xamarin publishes in terms of compiler binaries, but I sudo maintain this as well, and about a year ago, with the move to the .NET Core version of the compiler, everything that happened in here broke miserably. And so for that reason, the mono version of this has languished a bit, the mono version of the compiler. Now, you can still use the .NET Core version of the compiler, like what comes in the .NET SDK, to build mono-compatible assemblies. Just targeting net 471 or 461 or whatever, while building on, well, yeah, you just target those target frameworks and then run the binary on mono. I'm not entirely sure, like I said, how Xamarin works at this point, so I'm not going to speculate in that way. So, but yeah, the general idea would be fixes go into .NET F# and then get merged down into here for mono. But that's not quite what we're doing today. We are doing the FSharp.Compiler.Service, and this all looks vaguely correct. This is, yep, a whole bunch of 16.2 merges that you can see. Yep. Whole bunch of in-unit test merges as well. So this looks, generally speaking, quite good, with a whole bunch of the useless merges that we talked about not needing to be in here, just not in here at all. Like all of those merges that went from master to the 16.2 branch don't exist in here at all, because we're just caring about master. So this should be good. Let's do this. So our general pattern for each of these, so get rebase is going to apply the commit. There are most likely going to be some conflicts. We have 96 commits to go through. Hopefully we won't have to do something for every single one of them. So it's going to try and apply the commit. And if the commit doesn't conflict in any way, great, it'll just move on to the next one. So you could see we're on 2 of 96 because 1 of 96 already worked. If there's no conflicts, it'll just keep going. This is all typical Git stuff at this point. But what does a conflict look like in FSharp.Compiler.Service? Well, I'm glad you asked. So in this case, it's the dev guide that's in the root of the repository. The FSharp.Compiler.Service repository basically deletes a bunch of stuff from the upstream.NET FSharp repository because it just doesn't care about it. Like dev guide MD, we don't have it, we don't want it. And why is that? That's because development doesn't actively happen in this repo. The only new code that happens in this repo is code around packaging the FSharp.Compiler.Service component. So we don't care about this at all. And so we've deleted it on our side. So all we're going to do is continue with it deleted. So we delete it and continue about our rebase. And that is there are a whole bunch of files in the root of the repository that we're just going to purge if they show up as a conflict. Cool. So we're on 3 of 96. Other types of conflicts that we will often see in here are conflicts in FSharp.core. So if we look at the repository layout here under source FSharp, there's FSharp.core. Well, the FSharp.Compiler.Service doesn't build FSharp core locally. It uses a NuGet package like any other library might. And so if there are conflicts in basically anything in FSharp core itself, we don't care. We just delete everything in here, almost everything. So there are more instructions in the, I believe, the README about what kinds of folders and files we delete. But cool. This is something I expected. So one of the conflicts here was that there was a change to the FSharp compiler tests. We don't run the tests. The assumption that we make in the FSharp Compiler.Service component is that the compiler logic itself has been tested and validated, or else why would it be in the master branch? So because of that, we just, all of the tests that are specifically for the compiler or specifically for the Visual Studio integration, just don't matter at all. So we delete them and continue along. That's it. There are tests, there are tests specifically for the FSharp Compiler.Service components themselves that we don't delete. Similar sort of thing. So we will just continue along. I would expect a lot of these, because a lot of these commits were moving the tests around to in-unit and whatnot, I would expect conflicts here. Good, good, good. Test, F# core. Yeah, so this one needs to go too. Because it's an F# core change, we don't build F# core out of this repository, so why have it? Now I am sort of curious what changed. And so one of the things you can do, if this is interesting to you, we're at the change that made that added some additional support for struct tuples to some of the link expressions. So that's all it took. That's kind of cool. Instead of just make tuple type, it was if the tuple type is value type, then make it a struct tuple. So that's kind of cool. So one of the reasons I do this rebase the way I do is so that it doesn't look like it's me doing all of this work. So in this case, we can see that Kevin Malenfant was the person that committed this change in the first place. And because the author information is in the commit, when we merge this, you'll see that I committed the commit, but he authored it, which is, I think, good for maintaining attribution and overall history. All right, lots of changes here. They're all compiler tests though, because this, this one is a Stack Overflow change in the inline IL. So a similar sort of fix here. We generally speaking don't care about these tests, so we're not going to have them. Boop. And one thing I do like to do, I was thinking about deleting everything under tests F#, and so one thing I do like to do is poke in here and verify that the stars that or the removal that I was thinking about doing is just going to delete those few things. So in this case, we can see that some fixes happened and some tests were added. Well, we don't care about these tests, so we do want to just delete everything under tests F# in this way. And in this case, we do want to force it. We did have to force it in that case because these two files were added under tests as part of this commit, and we'd already sort of added them. So yeah, so you can see here was the content of the commit itself that fixed it. All these individual commits were authored by this person to fix Stack Overflows where it's appropriate. Hey, look, it was Will. I've managed to get myself in an interesting situation. All right, this is good. Like, this is decent progress. We're about a quarter of the way through, and I've only been actively doing this for a few minutes. Look, it's another test. So we purge them out. Generally speaking, since I started doing this rebase instead of repeated merges, I don't often see conflicts in the code itself, which is really nice. The last time I had really bad conflicts was when Don went through the whole code base and did all of the spacing and tuple parenthesizing, like consistency changes. That was a nightmare to deal with. Luckily, that's not something I have to deal with anymore since I've already dealt with absorbing that change. And so some cases when there is a commit that's done that has conflicts and it's all things that we don't care about, what'll happen is that we can't get rebase continue because it would be a no-op. So in that case, we'll just get rebase skip. In that case, that commit will be lost from our history, but because it only contained things that we didn't care about, like nothing of import is lost. All right, a bunch of tests were added for anonymous records, it looks like. Yes, this was formatting stuff for quick info and pretty printing, which explains that. So here's a whole bunch of tests that, again, we don't care about. And then here's some stuff we especially don't care about, which is anything under the VS integration folder. That's all of the Visual Studio tooling and whatnot. That is like If we didn't care about anything under tests F#, we especially don't care about anything under VS integration. And again, I'm just going to sanity check myself here to make sure that all of the things I'm about to star delete are fine. But yeah, everything under tests F# we don't care about. The FCS, like the FSharp.Compiler.Service specific tests, I believe are under, yeah, everything we need is under FCS itself. So as long as there aren't conflicts in here, we're generally pretty good. F# tests, F# QA, and VS integration. So end result is we get all of the pre-printing code changes, which flow through to the compiler service APIs, and none of the tests. I just want to point out that Philip Carter has the best commit messages. Get Yote is one of his best, I think. Like, beautiful commits. All right, same thing here. This is all tests, so we're just going to if I could type burn them and continue on. Same deal. All right, we are coming up on a third of the way through. This is rolling right along. Poor Visual Studio Code is just churning in the background though. Like every time one of these commits comes in and changes source code, it triggers a rebuild that's happening, so. More tests, don't care, continue on. So you can see how it gets very methodical, like very, very repetitive, I think is the better word there. Yep, so we're going to get rid of F# tests and F# QA tests and continue. Yep, same deal. Generally, I try and run through this process monthly, but if something especially bad is going on, like I think 2 months ago we had a really bad set of Stack Overflows that was happening, and like as soon as that got merged into master, I ported that over because like it was hurting me personally at work, but also I just think it's important to be on top of fixing these sort of core things. There are a few libraries that so many other things in the ecosystem depend on that it's, I think, really important that they get migrated or updated as soon as possible, if only so they don't block anything else. Yeah, so a lot of this stuff, like we said before, is just moving things over to in-unit from the old sort of testing framework. So super, super easy. We are halfway through. Yep. Hold on, what happened here? Yeah, good. All right, more tests, don't care, continue on. All right, so this is our first sort of interesting one in a bit. This is, we don't build F# core, so we don't want this new spec at all. We don't run VSTS, so we don't want that. And we don't run Azure pipelines. We have like Travis CI and AppVeyor pipelines. So all of these can be removed. We've got Azure pipelines, we've got VSTS signed, and we've got source, FSharp, NuGet, boom. I didn't realize there were multiple things named NuGet there. All right. Yes. Cool. So, yep. We don't care about PDBs in FSharp core because we don't publish FSharp core. I'm gonna say it again. All right, so what changed here? Here's some actual source code that we want. Yep. And FSharp build is the MS build targets, or sorry, the .NET SDK targets and things like that for invoking the compiler. We don't care about those at all. We don't build or provide those. FSharp compiler private, again, we don't do that. We don't care about any of the localization stuff. Don't care about end-to-end build tests. Don't care about test FSharp at all, and don't care about test FSharp QA. So same sort of thing here. Just remove sharp.build and FSharp.Compiler.Private and all of the XLF, which is the translation language, or I think XLF stands for Cross Language Framework or something like that. And all of the tests end-to-end build tests, tests FSharp, and tests FSharp QA. Double check here, all we have is the IL writing and compile optimization and compile option stuff, which is all great. And so we continue on. I think this hash algorithm selection, which one was this? This was here. Yeah, I want to look at this one real quick because I think this one is going to end up resulting in an API change. So if this does actually result in a public API change, then we will want to bump a major version of the package. Oh, this is PDB. This is all PDB stuff. This is ILWrite FSI. Is this even public? So what do we got here? So all the Absil stuff might be public. You can go check that real quick. Everything you see that's like Absil, okay, so this entire thing, that's the writer itself. So this entire module is internal, so it's not public, so it's not necessarily a breaking change. What was the other one, the other files that changed? It was ILWrite PDB, so let's look at that one. This one's also internal. Great, so no public API surface area changed, so it's still a minor version bump, not a major. So that's great. Now compile ops actually. Yeah, this one's internal as well. And what changed in here? We have that. Ah, haha, the compiler itself changed. Where are we at? We're at 2145. That's the type check config. I'm trying to remember. Oh, yeah, okay, so Fubarius. This is sort of a thing that came over from OCaml. It's called signature files, right? So normally in a .fs file, when you define some sort of binding, you could say let private or let internal or something like that. And so you can provide the accessibility of whatever that member is in line with its definition. That's one way to do it. The sort of more OCaml way is to provide what's called a signature file. And a signature file is like a shorthand for sort of, what's the best way to describe it? This is like the type signature of the module that it's associated to, right? So this module for fcs.fs, oh boy, I'm scrolling up a bunch, is FSharp.Compiler driver. Well, the associated FSI file is also FSharp.Compiler driver. And the way these signature files work is only the things in here are publicly visible. Everything else in fcs.fs, like it doesn't matter what they're declared as in here, they are considered private unless they are exposed in here. So one easier way to determine if a public API changed in a destructive way, at least in the compiler, is to use these FSI files and inspect them. So one thing that's important to note here is you're right. You can't have the same module. Well, yeah, you can't have the same module across multiple files, but the compiler doesn't treat these as multiple files. It treats the signature as a layer of information on top of the source implementation file. Yeah. Yes. An FSX file is an F# script file. So those are files that are meant to be run by F# Interactive. That's not saying that you couldn't load an FS file into F# Interactive. It's just an FSX file never belongs to a project, etc., etc. So those are the three main file extensions you'll see for F#. FS is source code, FSX are scripts, and FSI is a module signature file. Foobar, when you say define the file in a special way in the FS proj, do you mean is there like a special way to include an interface file in the project? Because if so, if we jumped into the project, it would just be an include right next to the source file. So you'd see content fsc.fs for the actual source code, and then content fsc.fsi just right after it. So that's what goes on there. In fact, let's see if I can find a reasonable project to show. Nope. Is that it? No, that's not it. Oh, there you go. fsc.fsproj. Oh, sorry. fcs.fsproj. This is gross. All of the test ones end up in there. Oh, there we go. There's FSI. So if we look at the project for FSI, then weird, it's not in there. Well, there went my idea for quickly showing the point. Well, some of them we've purged because we don't care about them in this context. So sorry. I may have inadvertently removed or promised more than I can actually show right now. Oh, actually, FSharp.Compiler.Service is a fine example of this. Yeah, so here's an example of how it appears. So in every case, the FSI file has to come before the associated source file. So what will happen is the compiler will see this. It will load all the modules and signatures in the signature file into its type checking context, and then it will cross-check that against the rest of the compilation. It actually, I don't believe, matters where logger fs is in the order, so long as it's somewhere after the FSI file. So whenever it sees logger fs will be defining the same members that are in logger.fsi, and so you will, if something isn't right with that, like if something's defined in logger fs in a way that conflicts with logger.fsi, you'll get an error from the compiler saying, hey, the signature file said this member has signature blah, but as implemented it has signature blah. Fix that, please. So signatures first, then source somewhere after. So that was a long way around, but the upshot of that is I don't think we have an API change in this commit, so we're still at a minor. I know I've been doing this for a while when my fingers stop typing rebase correctly. All right, a little more than halfway through. Making good time. This is more tests. We don't care. Same thing, more tests. You can see this was more tests being ported over to end unit, which, while fantastic work, is not work that we are interested in right now. Same thing. So once we work our way through all this, what we'll have to do is go check the release notes in here and figure out what we want to say in here. I typically like to have one line that says the to and from that we integrated from, and then sort of look over that and summarize some of the things that are in there. Because what goes in here is what's going to be in the description on NuGet. It's what's going to be in the description on the package itself, and I'd like to have more than like nothing on there, right? I'd like for people to be able to look at the description and get an idea of what's coming. All right. Oh, we got some good stuff in here. This is probably the 16.2 merge. There are so many files changed, and so you can see a lot of stuff in this VS integration. We get to just completely remove that. So in fact, I'm going to do that to make looking at this better or easier for all of us right now. And all the tests too. Is this easier to see yet? No. Hey, actually, yes. So we don't care about anything in this sort of staged chunk, because these are just all the things that we just deleted. Just giving it a quick scan to make sure, and holy crap, this goes on for quite a while. Yeah, more type checking tests. So what we can see here is, boy, we're gonna have to start at the top because there's a lot in there. All right, so we don't care about the launch tasks. We don't have, or we have Travis builds. Don't care about that. Don't care about that. Don't care about benchmarks. We're probably, yeah. I think we want to keep the doc stuff. Yeah. Yeah. All this eng stuff comes from that .NET Arcade, so we can purge all of that. I kind of want to see what one of these looks like. Let's pop this open and see what we can see. Where'd it go? Oh. Looks like we have some auto-generated documentation that didn't quite work so well. We don't care about that. We don't care about these. We don't care about FSharp SLN. We care about FSharp.Compiler.Service SLN, which is in the FCS like subdirectory, so we don't care. We don't care about anything under eng. Yeah, we should be able to just continue selectively purging some of this stuff here. Looks like we are going to have some actual source code conflicts finally to go through. So let's get rid of that. This one is weird and complex enough that I'm going to want to run an FCS build after to make sure I got everything right. Everything else has been sort of trivial up until this point, but this one is big and gnarly enough that I want to sort of checkpoint and make sure that we're in a happy place build-wise. So let's get rid of all of those. Let's get rid of everything in source FSharp.build. Because we absolutely know we don't care about that. Same with eng. Anything else here we can purge real quick? Anything under setup, which is how they build, like anything under setup is how they build the VSIX packages for the Visual Studio extension. So we can get rid of that. And now we have actual things that we care about. Except for these tests here. Let's go ahead and purge them just to make sure that we're not looking at stuff that we don't need to. Get rid of those and also get rid of these. Apparently I needed to add the recurse flag, so unit tests and tests sharp.core.unit tests and source FSharp.Compiler interactive settings. Okay, this leaves us with like a small enough set that we can start chopping away at it. So for this, we're going to switch over to VS Code. And, yep. Wish I could just minimize that changes blob right there. Good Lord. Look at all these changes. All right, let's kill some more things that we know we don't need. So, contributing. Really? Oh yeah. Really? so we want to keep this. Yeah, let's definitely get rid of VSTS signed and dev guide and FSharp.SLN. I think, or no, FSharp test we don't care about. And test guide and visual FSharp.SLN, none of those we care about. What else we got here? Okay, so we've got actual code here. So let's go look at the README first. Oh, this is the classic. Okay, yeah. We keep conflicting on this because they've got the build status for the actual .NET F# repo in here. We don't care about that. We just want to continue on with our link to the documentation. I was about to be bad and update some of these to point to .NET F# because they renamed the repos, but we're not going to do that right now because that's conflating things and we want to stay on the straight and narrow. Alright, so we fixed the README. We want this contributing.md, I believe. Yeah, this is the thing I wrote to let people know that changes don't happen in FCS directly. So we'll add that one. Let's go look at Roslyn package version. We pretty much take this every time. This time we're not going to because our version is already ahead because we have synced up enough. So we're going to keep that. And also Roslyn package version shouldn't matter at all for us because we're not doing anything with Roslyn. But that's a whole other thing. Let's look at the global JSON. Alright, so we'll go from preview 5 to preview 6, and we will update our version of .NET Arcade, because this one is numerically higher, etc., etc. Also, as a personal note, this syntax is interesting to me. It looks like there's a .NET VS tool that you can get. Anyway, I'm interested to see this repo local tool thing that they've got going. Let's go look at FSC app config. I'm not sure that this is relevant at all. To what we do. Is FSC main even? So what I'm looking for here is this FSC project has very little in it, which is a signal that maybe we've deleted it already. And especially you can see here, like the FS proj should already be deleted. So should the app config be in there at all? My suspicion is probably not. I'm going to investigate this a bit by checking to see if FCS main is in the parent directory, which it's about to get deleted too. So probably not, you know? Or it's marked for deletion already. So it's probably, we don't need any of these. So we're going to go ahead and remove them. Sharp, FSC, and go ahead and mark that like that, and FSharp, FSI. And we'll do star there so we get the FSI and the FSI NECPD. All right, so now we just have a few actual code changes left in here. So let's go look at service.fsi first. I like to do the FSI files first to get an idea of what I should be looking for. This is only a white space change. I don't know if you can see it on your editor, but there, or on your viewer, but there's a space here that isn't. So in the interest of keeping things all consistent, we're going to get rid of that space. Next change. Hey look, more white space right there. We're just going to purge all of this. All right. We've got some additional code here. It looks like, oh, this is all the rename change. This I'm going to sanity check myself against, oh, you can't see it over there, against .NET F#. And I'm going to go pop over to service.fsi and see what the dealio is there. This is source FSharp.Service service.fsi. I apologize for bouncing the screen around so much. I know that flashes between white and black and whatnot can be hard. Okay, so in this case, they don't have any of that deprecation stuff there, like because the version has already gone out with the rename. So generally speaking, when there are changes in the source code, we're going to treat .NET F# as the source of truth. We do not want to have diffs in the source as much as possible, and so we're just not going to take any of this change. So now our service.fsi looks like their service.fsi. Now, what I will say is this is a public-facing change. This changes the public API of the member. So now we're at a major. So I'm going to go back over to my notes here and do that. And I'm going to make a note for myself for the release notes. That's gross looking. Command-Alt-Shift-V. All right, I'll see if I can make my fingers contort in that way, but I'll try and do that next time. Because like the formatting coming over into this Notes app is pain in the tail. Has been removed. Okay, that's good to know. And so, we want to replay all those changes. Great. So now we have service.fs as well. We're going to check service.fs upstream as well, just to make sure. Where are we? We're line 527. There's probably a GitHub shortcut for go directly to line, but I don't know it. Okay, so we do have the preferred UI language going in here. And I think this was part of the test changes to make sure that languages are consistent across runs. So we'll keep that. And yep, we do want to take all the UI language changes. What changed here? Did anything change? If this is some weird white space stuff, I'm gonna be a little bit peeved. But we'll take this change anyway. In VS Code, there's a, yes, that would have been the smart way to do it. In fact, just for my own edification, we're going to try that. fs hash L526. Yep. Fubarius, you are bringing in all the tips today. Global foreground, type check, count statistic. This one's weird because this already existed. So we only want one of them. So I mean, I'm not just missing something super obvious here, right? Like this, these are the same thing, yeah. So we're just gonna get rid of that whole thing. This was some white space removal. This is probably also white space. Oop-a-doop-a-doop. Yeah, like white space normalization would be my guess there. Like somebody inadvertently had a second new line in there. All right, and this is the matching change to our signature file change that we ripped out. So we'll leave that like that. And now service.fs is good. And so we've done service.fs, service.fsi, and now we just have prim lexing, which has a couple opens. That's a duplicate open. That's a duplicate open. So I don't know what the deal is there. So, all right. So let's do a thing here now. Let's go make sure FCS builds after all of those changes, because that was a large amount of changes. I like those red lines. All right. This is where things start to get fun, so bear with me a bit. All right, let's look at FSharp.Core.FSproj. Oh, you know what? I think they did change it, didn't they? System threading task parallel 4.0 is not compatible with, oops, sorry. It's not compatible with Net Standard 1.6. What does it support? It supports, oh dear, Net 4.5, Net Core 5.0. This is their future-proof moniker. What in the world here? Let's look at how all of these are included. So we've got queryable, requests, TPL, thread, and thread pool. So we're building for Net Standard 1.6 at this point, and the version that we're pulling in is this. So we're going to go look in that version.props. All right, let's see where we can find this. Oh, is that why? Okay, so we can't find this version anywhere, which means it's plugging in something weird for this variable, which means if we couldn't find the version anywhere, where did the file go that provides the versions? Which says to me that maybe the rebase deleted it. So or maybe I did. Here is, so what is show? Yeah. What was it? as ing-version.props. So what if we just check out or reset head? Okay, and now we can actually look at what's in these and see if this is the cause for our version mismatch. And if it is, that would be sort of a signal that I need to step back and reevaluate that, delete everything under eng rule, because they've obviously reworked the whole system, right? So this is where things get fun. All right, so it doesn't want to bring this up in search here, so we get to go to it the old-fashioned way. Oh, sorry. Okay, so there's there's version.props. And now let's see if we can find some of our required versions in here. Yep, there they are. Okay, so we do definitely need this version.props file. I'm also curious to see what's in this version details XML. So let's see what uses version.props. Nothing. All right, so we are going to bring back everything in the ing directory and take a look at this. So looking at this intelligently, hopefully now, if we go to the FSharp.core directory, we should be able to trace back the sort of MS build resolution hierarchy. So there's typically, directory build props, which pulls in directory build props, up a directory from that. Yeah, same for targets. Yeah, that's it. So that uses that. That's published stuff. I was really expecting more. I'm expecting a directory build props target somewhere that loads this version thing, right? Like, All right, so the next thing to do is directory.build props. All right, so we certainly don't care about setup stuff because that's all the BSIX stuff. We certainly don't care about build or private compiler stuff or the binaries because we don't package the binaries. We don't care about anything under tests. We don't care about anything under VS integration. And this one is specifically for the test, so it couldn't have done anything. So really, I mean, let's see. Test. Okay, so now we can go to FSharp tests, .directory build the props, see if this uses version.props. No. Ugh. This is going to be really interesting. And by interesting, I mean really aggravating. So next thing to do would be to go see how it works in here for real. So first batch, let's see if we can find all the places where this is defined. Same deal, FSharp core fs proj, ing versions.props. So let's see what uses versions.props. Ing common, build utils, I mean it's fine. It's just like convention based and magic. Like it's killing me now that I suppose what I could do is build this one in verbose mode and we could all go trawling through MS build output together. But that doesn't seem like a fun thing for, like a fun journey for all of us to go on together, you know? Okay, so we failed still. Let's go to, oh, I probably flubbed something in here. FSharp.Compiler.Service FSproj 687. There we go. Ah, there's an error down there. How is that? I guess it needed a new line. Let's try it again. Okay, good. At least it failed in the same way. Unexpected end of file. The following elements are not closed project. I mean, you can try. VS Code seems to think it's fine now. Nope. Alright, so let's see if we can so why is this project file not loading now? It says that run generate code before that, after that. The condition's not wrong. Can that be a self-close target? Let's try that. That shouldn't be a problem. Like, one thing that's weird about this is that they build FCS as part of the official test matrix in FSharp core, or .NET FSharp. Whole bunch of fake warnings. Why can't you read this file? You know what? Ah, that's why. Duplicate project elements up at the top. I don't know how that got in there. This is looking slightly better. I don't want to say I'm super optimistic, but it's looking slightly better. So maybe we don't need the version. See, that would make sense to me. So if we go here, yeah, this is what I thought. Like, we shouldn't have been building FSharp.core at all, because this thing takes a package reference on it. So we shouldn't even have like FSharp.core the project at this point. So So whatever. What are we building at this point? FSharp.Compiler.Service. Okay, we're building FSYAC. Cool. Yeah, this looks good. This looks better. Cool. All right, so we're missing this text file. Okay, so let's try. So normally when we're missing a file, it's because we deleted it prior, like sometime way back in history, and a change has been made to FSharp.Compiler.Service upstream so that now it requires it. When this happens, what we do is just take wholesale from what's in .NET Master, right? So specifically what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab that file from the .NET F# commit that we are trying to integrate to, right? So if we go to that SHA and we go get that particular file, which in our case is source F# FSI strings.txt. Now we should be able to go to FSI strings.txt. We have all the FSI strings, and now we go build FCS again, and boom. We probably did, and that was probably entirely my fault, because we don't take the FSI binary is the thing, but we use a lot of the internal FSI mechanisms. Most of those don't live in the FSI directory, though, if that makes sense. Apparently, this is like one of the few things that does. Yeah, and same here. I purged those things and should not have. So we're going to grab them from here. Yeah. Oh, because I'm down one directory, I need to go up to get the corrected stuff. There we go. Third time's the charm, folks. Yeah, so you can see there's all the service files, and then the 2 FSI files. Apparently we didn't delete the FSC files because those are working just fine. So perhaps in my haste, I just went a bit too fast. This is going to take a second. So we're building the 4.6.1 version of it. I think we built a Net Core 1.6 and a 4.6.1 version of it. As an enhancement later, since FSharp.core has a Net Standard 2.0 build now, we might consider, like not as part of this release, but as an enhancement to follow on, we might consider doing a Net Standard 2.0 version to make use of that Net Standard 2.0 F# core. If only to simplify everybody's dependency graphs way much. God, I don't even remember which I don't even remember which rebase we're on. So I'm going to go look at that while I wait for the build to complete. Like which number of commit. Oh boy. Is there a way in Git rebase to say like which one am I on? Still building. Everybody go get some coffee. Hey, there we go. All right, this is great because now it's building the samples, which means we're done building the compiler service itself. This is great. This means we probably didn't break stuff too badly. Excellent. Okay, so with that, that means we can go ahead and add the 3 source code files that we changed. And we are only going to add this removal. We're not going to add this stuff to minimize the deltas as much as possible. So to do that, we're going to do an interactive add of FCS, FSharp.Compiler.Service stuff. So we are going to stage that deletion, and we're not going to stage that. So what we should see now is that this bit was not added, which is what I expect. Cool. Whew. Yeah, this is exactly what I thought. G rebase continue. That was a big one, folks. All right, that was 58 and 96, and that was the hump. Like that was the big fella. That was a 16.2 merge. And these are new spec changes. We don't care about new specs at all. Cool. I was a little worried that that might have been a bit too wide of a regex, but it did catch just the things we want. See what came in here. Change the debug type. The PDBs, I mean. This is .NET Arcade changes that I don't care about at all. This was a fix for invalid PDBs getting written. Hooray UTF-8 byte order marks. Cool, and that's all PDB validation stuff. Excellent. I'm specifically looking forward to that PDB fix making it out. Where did we land on this ing stuff? I think where we landed on the ing stuff was that the versions file was a complete red herring because we weren't building F# core anyway, which was the thing that needed the versions file. Given that, I don't believe we actually need anything in ing. And to prove that, we're going to do a build real quick. this build should be much quicker than the last one because like not a lot of the code has changed since we did the big one already. There'll be a little bit like the Absol PDB changes, but oh, this is exciting. There's a new stage because there's a new version of .NET Core that we're using now, apparently. Never mind. Can't do the thing. I was wrong. Don't listen to me. What SHA are we on currently? We are on this one. Cool. So if we just grab everything from Eng at that point. Yeah. Yeah. That gets us everything from Eng. And we'll do a build just to make sure FSharp Core is happy. So the reason, this is actually sort of an interesting catch-22. The reason that FSharp.Core is getting built isn't for FSharp.Compiler.Service itself. It's for FSLex and FSYac, which are the lexer and parser that are bundled into FCS, which at some point those were package dependencies, and they were changed from package dependencies to like locally built dependencies so that they would make use of the same FSharp core. So that instead of having to do this cycle where you released an FSharp core and then upgraded your FSLex, FSYac to use that, and then upgraded your FCS to use those, you could do them all in one. So that's what's happening there. Yeah, so you can see us, we're building FSLex and FSYac right now. And these tools use a stripped down version of FSharp Core. So we have to wait a bit. Sorry, I know these builds aren't the most exciting thing. Does anybody have any other questions while we're going? Anyway, I'm pretty certain that we're in a good place with this now. We just have to wait 11 billion minutes for the build to finish. Yeah. Oh yes. Oh yes, it absolutely would be useful, and that is something that's 100% on the roadmap. This repo exists because Microsoft wasn't interested in publishing the compiler service as an API, right? And so the F-Sharp Software Foundation, which is sort of the caretaker of everything under the F-Sharp org on GitHub, decided that we would fork out, strip down to just the things that build FCS, and publish FCS out of that repo. So we take the downstream maintenance on. However, now that partly it's Microsoft's attitude has changed, partly it's the tooling's a lot better, partly it's like everything is open source now. Now that the environment is much more friendly, the hope is that we can merge in and eventually deprecate this repo, because it is a pain. It is something that is not, strictly speaking, technically necessary. So until that day comes, I do this once a month, if not more. But step one to making that happen is reverse integrating this repository back into .NET F# to synchronize the diffs in the FCS side of things up into .NET F#. And once that's there, figuring out a way to integrate into their build and deployment and engineering process, they being Microsoft, in a way that still gives the community the ability to publish versions of F#Compiler.Service out of band with Visual Studio releases. Because that's like the single most annoying part of all of this. There's a reticence to allow community members to publish things. And when we own this repository and we merge into it and we do these things, we have the power to publish new versions of the packages. That's the core reason that we have this fork, because we can't always count on Microsoft to have the time to do those things, nor should we. So yeah, long answer. Hopefully that sort of expounds on the relationship. It's not normally this long of a process. Like, this is one of the longer ones since I started doing it more regularly. 96, I'd say, is on the higher end of commits to do. So, and it especially doesn't help when they squash and merge, because then it's just this giant blob of changes, like you saw with the 16.2 merge back a bit ago. Good lord, this is taking a long time. Anyway, at this point we will be like 2/3 of the way through, and I'm hoping that all the rest flow a little bit smoother than these last couple. But really, the takeaways for me at this part is that I need to figure out more about what that ing directory is doing, and potentially identify ways to pull out fslex, fsyak, like to see if there's maybe a way to get those artifacts, like, because what fslex and fsyak make are the lexer and parser source files that go into the build. So maybe there's a way that those could be distributed or something, so that we don't have to have all of that stuff to build this project. Cool. We are in a good place again. Oh, because it's active.restore.targets. Cool, so now we can continue on. We are almost 2/3 of the way through. Yep, don't care about tests. Now the thing that would make this go super fast is if I identified all the folders that we like never want ever and made a little alias to just remove everything under those and go about your day, you know? Yep, don't care about PS integration or tests F#. or source FSharp XLF at all. What was this one? This was code cleanup. Oh, this one's going to be fun. This one is improvements to C#, F# interop, I think. I'm not sure if that has landed yet or not. Don't care about tests at all. So F# and tests F# QA. Same deal. Same deal. Man, I love it when it's easy. Good. I love it when that happens, like 3 or 4 in a row where I don't have to type anything. Now, if I were like a vMaster or a VinMaster or something, and I had it plugged in to my command line, I could have just hopped back over, deleted that one folder chunk, and gone on. Like, it's one of those things that I feel like I should learn to do better eventually, but just haven't yet. Let's see what happened in here. Now, this isn't really stuff that I am going to have to care about because we just treat the ing folder as a black box, but I like to try and look at it sometimes. This is all, so I mean, they updated some Roslyn packages. $75. More commits, folks. We're almost there. Same thing here. Same thing there. I wish there was a way to make get rm like just try a file path and not fail if it couldn't find it, you know? Just because it starts to kill your flow. All right, so we have tests or tests F# and F# QA in this one, so we're safe to just use that. Same deal. The reason you see those two together is because this test F# QA thing, they use these environment.list files to like just list out which test files should be run, and then there's normally an associated change to a source file that contains the new tests that are going to be run. We're getting close. Can you feel the anticipation building? Don't care about either of the pipelines. Now, one thing we could do eventually to ease the sort of the interop back into it is start using the VSTS and the Azure Pipeline stuff in here. I don't think that's worth it particularly because of a few reasons. First off, FCS is already built as part of the builds in .NET F#, and we would have to modify those a lot in order to make them build under our org. We'd have different secrets, different paths for things probably. So I think it would just be more reasonable to like get the source merged back in. It's not in here. Is it in here? Yeah, look, there's a whole bunch of FCS builds in here. So they build FCS for Windows using the same stuff that we're doing it now. Windows, Linux, and Mac OS. So the same stuff, or old versions of it, but the same stuff we're doing here happens on every build of .NET F#. So I think it would be more reasonable just to reverse merge and start plugging into that. All right, just a few things to clean out here. Whole bunch of unit tests. There's this language server project that is new that we'll have to get rid of too. We're not going to touch anything in these at all, though. We might even delete this. So I thought that, and I actually, it might be easy to do something like test/F# open capture group QA close capture group 0 or more times, right? So like that might be an easier way to do it. But I'm using Z shell here, which might behave differently from bash or whatnot. So let's go ahead and purge those out. Looking at this right here, we have this source FSharp compiler language server. I want to go see, yeah, I want to go see if there are any other files in that set of projects here. Yeah, there we go, FSharp compiler language server. Yeah, so we have all these other source files here, so we haven't purged it, so we should keep the rest of the files there. I just wanted to make sure. So I want to see what's going on here. New NuGet sources. They bumped to 3.0 for testing. And they changed the target on that language server. Cool. More VSTS stuff and Azure pipelines. See what happened here. Oh, this was changed because Microsoft has some internal policy where like the author name can't be set in there, which, not gonna lie, miffs me a little bit. I'm still working through some angst about that Microsoft internal policies get the dry package attribution. So I'm a little salty. Yeah, here's a little bit more detail here. Internal package publishing policies. The author explicitly has to be Microsoft. So sounds like a very inflexible packaging policy. And that's just one of several things that I low-key worry about with regards to the unified repositories. Like, it might be easier from a technical perspective, but I don't want to see the efforts of the F# Software Foundation completely subsumed, right? So God, we're getting so close. I can taste it. kill the BS integration stuff. All right, we got there. We got there. So, where we are now is all of these commits layered on the same way they are from master, just up here. So I'm gonna keep this commit SHA, go check out my little marker branch, go check that back out. Yeah, so now everything from up till today layered on top of the tag as expected. So this is great. This feels good. Here's the actual work. So we're gonna checkpoint. We're gonna push our new branch, our new updated branch there. What do we got? Aug 11, 2019. So we'll push this up, and now the last changes that we have to do involve packaging, right? So go over to these release notes. I think we said we were at a major bump because of the because of the namespace removal, right? So let's start some packaging here. 31.0.0 changes integrate.NET F# from, and just aesthetically, I don't want to do this whole thing. I'd rather keep the same number of characters. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Blah. Improvements is kind of ostentatious, right? Like they might not be improvements. So let's just say changes. Namespace. Let's go look at some other stuff that we got. Does the FSharp.Compiler.Service itself target? Yeah, so it still targets net standard 2.0, which makes sense. It's a library. What am I saying? So that's not relevant. Yeah. This is actually really helpful. There are tons of tools out there that sort of guess if an F# identifier needs to be like quoted with the double backticks or whatnot. And for some reason, this function was private, but Eugene went and made it public recently, and that's actually like non-trivially useful. This is in Lex help. Yep. All right, let's see if we can find the whole structure. Does identifier need quotation? All right, so this is in keywords, I believe. Yeah, right there. So this is F# Lex help. keywords does identifier need quotation. Whoop, whoop, a doop. All right, what else cool is going to be in this release? Whole bunch of dependency stuff. Don't care about that. This was just cleanup. Let's go see what this issue was. Yeah, there are several PDV enhancements. There were some anonymous record PDV fixes in the past month, I believe. This isn't relevant, this isn't relevant. What about LXGen? I don't know enough about what that did to talk about it. Dependencies, yeah, there's the anonymous record PDV stuff. There was formatting. Records and values. Compiler, and there was IL reading stuff. Where'd I miss it? Ah, yes. And he added parse file no cache. We support struct tuples. Brief expression converter handles struct tuples. Yeah, those are this last one is the only other recent one. Oh, that's not the right one. I wanted to see this one, the FSharp checker parse file no cache. Okay, so it looks like this is a one-off. Yeah, this one looks like it's immediate, like not cached. I mean, hence the name, sure, but just wanted to make sure I got it right. FSharp checker. Cool. All right, I'm satisfied with this set of changes. Add all these. And now the other thing we want to check is in the build script here, there's like packaging stuff, right? Yeah, so I can, if I run NuGet here, yeah. So if we run this test and NuGet, we'll do the test, we'll build the package and be good to go. And then I can stop this stream and go make dinner. So what else is in here? So publishing the NuGets will follow on pretty quickly. I also like to, like, once the NuGets are published, and this is a thing I should probably do in the FSharp.Compiler.Service, in the build script, is I should plug in the release notifications. Like, I started adding these as well, right? So it's the same stuff that's in the release notes there. I just like to update or upload the source tars and the packages. So that's it. We've done the work. Now it's just waiting at this point. So I mean, at this point, if anyone has any final questions, I would love to handle them. But the rest is just going to be watching builds go, and I don't really feel like streaming that anymore. Yep, Project Cracker tool. Yeah, now it's building test projects now. Eventually we'll be able to kill the Project Cracker tool. Yeah, anytime. It's good to have you, Fubaris. Thanks everybody who came to watch. I hope it was educational. And, you know, hopefully in a matter of months, none of this will matter anymore because we'll have integrated it back into the main repo. But this is how the sausage gets made. Once the NuGets are up, I typically go to FSharp.Lint, Phantomus, and FS Autocomplete and do PRs to upgrade to the new versions. So that's it. Like, you normally have to do Phantomus and FSharp.Lint first because FS Autocomplete has dependencies on those, or at least for FSharp.Lint. But once those roll through, FS Autocomplete normally merges the PR within a day, and then it rolls out to Ionide like almost at the same time. So hopefully in a couple days, like maybe midweek, new version of Ionide will be out that has this in it. So everyone who uses these features, like the Stack Overflow stuff, will be able to consume them easily. So that's it. All right. If I can figure out how to stop streaming, then I'll stop streaming. But bye, everybody. Thanks for joining me.